Danny, what's up? I'm seeing you on Zoom.
You're on
Or
Zoom.
not Zoom.
I'm on Zoom. Dustin's in Florida, but we're still doing the podcast.
This podcast it won't stop for anything.
It won't stop. I just added this to my LinkedIn as a job. That's how excited I was. I said better late
Oh
than
my
never.
God. It's in my Instagram bio now, so that feels like very official to me.
Oh, what do you say? What does it
As
say?
it just says co-host of the Deconstruction Zone.
I love it.
It's just really profound.
It took you 40 weeks to get it in there.
I was like, you know what? This is part of my identity.
I just took away I had a line that said like husband to whatever father, and I got just roasted by a friend that's like the nerdiest Christian thing, and so I finally took that off. So it doesn't mean I don't love my kids and wife anymore, but I was like, I'm just gonna take those out of there.
That's like such a meme of like annoying pastors. Is like husband, father, pastor, and it's like just shut up.
I think
like,
we're
it's great to hear all those things.
I think we're so on like not self-aware that it seems like we have to do it, and so to hear that it was like a a meme or whatever, it's like, oh man, I didn't know I like had fallen into the trap.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you did fall into the trap.
Well, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so back it up a little bit. Have you heard of the comedian Pete Holmes?
Love Pete Holmes.
Love Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes is just
Pete, if you listen to the podcast, I won't hold it against you because I did email you to be on the podcast and you still haven't responded, but we would love to have you on the podcast.
I would lose my mind if he was on the podcast.
I think it'd be great.
I'm actually super quick. I need to tell a quick side story that is important. The first time I read Comedy Sex God, which is Pete Holmes' book, I was like, what did I say? I was like, he was talking about how he like did like hallucinogenic drugs, and that he was like that like was a spiritual awakening. And so my friends and I were at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I was telling them about this, and the waiter came over and he was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And we were like drugs and religion. and he just looks at us and he just goes, "I met God on LSD." And it was the best, my favorite Buffalo Wild Wings moment by far.
That's funny. Do you have a Mount Rushmore of like Buffalo Wild Wings experiences?
No, it's just that one. I mean, I always have a good experience with Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm not even gonna lie about that.
That's a great place.
It's kind of basic, but I think it's great. Anyway, so that guy met God on LSD, and then he just sat at our table and started talking. That was the best part. Anyway, so Pete Holmes, I was talking to someone from the PCA. We were talking about Pete Holmes, and he was like, "I love Pete Holmes' comedy," and he was like, "But I don't really like how he half-asses his spirituality." And I was like, okay. And I thought about it and was processing through it. And I was like, I think what you think of as half-assing spirituality is just spirituality you don't agree with. And I would think of Pete Holmes as someone who like whole asses their spirituality in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But so I was talking to a different pastor about Pete Holmes. And I was telling him the story about the half-assing spirituality. And he was like, so then what does it mean? Like, what does it look like for someone to half-ass their spirituality? And I was like, I don't know, but I said, I don't know, but I think I'm doing it.
You think you are half-assing yours?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And so that's like, I don't know, that's the topic that I wanted to bring to you. When that came up, I was like, I want to talk about it on the Deconstruction Zone because like, what does it mean to whole ass your spirituality?
Yeah, that's a good because I would actually be on your side with the Pete Holmes thing. Like, I'm actually pretty pro Pete Holmes as a comedian, but also as a religious person. Like the way he goes about it, like he's not shy about what he believes. He's like, I mean, I've seen him talk about it on like the Late Show. Like I've seen him talk about it like on his pod. Like he's not shy about his religious trauma, but also the way that his faith is like evolved. And so I think he is whole-assing his. It'd be a funny drinking game to see how many times they half-ass or whole-ass through the duration of this episode. But I think he is. So, I mean, before we get into it, like, what about you makes you think you're half-assing yours?
I just like, Okay. So this idea of half-assing, whole-assing, I think we're both quoting Parks and Rec.
100%. Yeah.
Would you when Leslie Knope or when Ron Swanson says to Leslie Knope like don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one? Been like a life motto for me because I just like want to do everything and then it doesn't
Yeah.
work out and I'm like but I just like I was reflecting on a few, like several weeks back, I guess, on our episode when I was like, I feel like I just need to like put the game of operation away.
Hmm.
You know, like I was like, I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm getting frustrated, and I just need to like put the lid on the box and put it back in the like game closet. And I feel like that's what I'm doing, but that feels very lazy.
Hmm.
And I don't, and maybe I don't think it's that simple, but I don't know. I guess I sometimes wonder if like where is it like I'm taking a break and where is it like I'm avoiding what I need to like encounter and process.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I do I don't know that I could pinpoint anything, but I do think there are certain parts that you are avoiding.
Yeah,
Like
I
in your
agree.
deconstruction where it's like I don't want there. I think there's likely, and you probably have the list of things like there's certain theological or spiritual things you're like, I don't have the capacity or the desire to unpack that right now. And so I'm going to put it away, put it on the shelf, whatever. So I think there is some level of avoidance. But, and I do think, like, I mean, the quote, right? Half ass one thing, don't, or whole ass one thing, don't have. Like, I do
Hmm.
sometimes feel like you have a foot in each camp. Though I wouldn't say that that's half assing it. Like, it feels to me like, and this is my perspective, so you have to put the words to this. And so, but from my perspective, it feels like you found a lot of freedom and space to breathe in the non-religious camp. So you have that there,
Yeah,
but you still are a person that cares about spirituality. You This has been your vernacular for a long time. You have all like you invested a lot of stuff, and so you still want to engage there. But I've not watched you really like dip a toe fully into either. Like early, even in deconstruction early on, like I think there was a desire to like, hey, I want to kind of step out into the world of the freedom and the fun of agnosticism and atheism. And then on the other side, it's like, but I also want to be like seen. This was something you said early on, like you wanted to be theologically respected, so you would have never jumped out of the ship full bore. And so I don't know. Like I wouldn't. So I just remind, I wouldn't say it feels like you're half-assing anything, but it does feel like you probably are living in two worlds simultaneously, which I feel like for me would be jarring. But I don't know if you enjoy that or if you even feel like that's what you're doing.
it it does feel like that, and I think like I, I don't. It's weird. Like it's weird to think about where I am, and I guess sometimes that's part of why I feel like I'm like half-assing it is because I don't think I can actually express it super clearly.
Hmm.
Like I don't think that I can very vividly be like, this is exactly where I'm at. And I feel like throughout this whole process, I was pretty much able to do that. Do you know
Okay.
what I'm saying? Like I feel like I was like, this is where I'm at, this is what I think, this is what I'm like wrestling with, but this is what I know to be true, and this is what I'm no longer sure about. Like I feel like through the all 40 weeks, I was like, I pretty much knew where I was at.
Hmm.
And then I kind of like I don't yeah, like I lost it. And so I'm just
Yeah.
it's this like I don't I'm not saying any words. I'm
No, you
sorry.
said. So I have an interesting question. Like, what do you have
Okay.
anything that you do know to be true? Like, where are you in that like of these are the things either I cling to or this is what like I know to be true? Like, or is it everything is completely up in the air still for you, or are certain balls landed that you've thrown up in the air?
I'm just like everything feels up in the air. And I have moments where I say something like like I have moments where I say something and I'm just like that like feels so like convicting and true. And like I was hanging out with a friend the other day and she was like Emily, like talking to you is normal, and then when you talk about like God and the Bible, like I haven't seen you light up like that. And she was like, and there's just something
Hmm.
like waiting to light up in there. And I was like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
um I don't, wouldn't say there's something that makes me really sad to say. There's not something that I'm like, I know this to be true
Yeah.
right
But
now. And that's what's like hard.
do you still like, I mean, we've talked about this before, like how what you left in like Presbyterianism was certainty, you left that behind. Like, do you long, like, do you, so like for me, I think about things like I'm a structure guy. Like I don't need my life like really programmed all the time, but I do thrive in situations with boundaries and rules and uncertainty. Um, so do you like, even though every ball is in the air and you've been walking this journey, like is that something you're like exhausted by like not having, or are you okay with like having all those balls in the air?
I mean, it's like here's how you say, like, I have one foot in each. Like, both extremes are less exhausting. One extreme being like, this is what certainty is. That is like not that exhausting. It's hard, and the yoke like isn't easy, and it is brutal, and it kills you. But at least you have certainty. And
Sure.
on the other end of like, nothing is certain. You don't know anything. Like, we're just all figuring it out. There's also a freedom in that, and there's also just a like, it's kind of like a giving up. Like, it's just like a,
Yeah, I feel that. Like, I felt that now at a spiritual level, because I even feel like the ministry that I do at the Well and with the podcast and like all this, like it's so middle groundish. Like, I get asked by people like in our conversations, like, why aren't you more prescriptive to Emily? Or like, or
hmm,
in the church setting, it's like, why? How can you say you don't know, right? Like, or that I might be wrong. And I get that because I'm exhausted oftentimes, like by holding tension, like in kind of being in the middle. It would be easier to be like, this is 100% certain. The Bible says all these things, right? But I don't usually go that direction. And it would, I think, be easier in some ways to be like, nothing's true at all. And so I'm just going to meander around in that. And so, and I think for you and for our audience, I think that's what most I think most people find the middle to be exhausting. And I think that's what makes deconstruction so hard. Especially coming,
hmm,
like, I think you have a really unique deconstruction experience. Maybe not unique, but you have a unique, like, you and people like you come from a place where there's so much more abandonment of the framework you once had, where it's like anything short of answers feels like failure, feels like half-assing it, I think.
ooh,
Um,
ooh, and like, it's like, what is this? Is okay, okay, hear me out. I think this is important. I think that we have, in like Christian circles, and maybe just in general, we have synonymized like living in the gray as the same as being lukewarm.
yeah,
And it's not, but I think that's what we match those in our head, and that's when there's like shame that comes from sitting in the middle.
that's so
Do you
funny.
think people see you as lukewarm, or
Yeah, so I'm preaching about the concept of being lukewarm this Sunday actually, like, as
okay?
well, not it's not really, but I talk about it, and I'm like, "You," like, I haven't even heard that phrase in forever, but I remember
Mm,
that was my biggest fear growing up, and even, like, early on in my like, people viewing me as that, because like, to think of like there's piping hot or freezing cold, right? And piping hot is I know all the answers and I'm like, I'm blah 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 blah. Freezing cold is like nothing, I know nothing, right? And to be in the middle does feel to a lot of people like a lukewarm compromise. I don't feel it that way, but
no,
I've had people like on TikTok and in real life accuse me of being lukewarm because I'm not claiming, like, putting the flag of certainty in these different tenets, you know?
but when I think of lukewarm, I think of like fervor and commitment,
Yeah.
and not certainty. But I think that sometimes we synonymize those.
Yeah, so, like, so what I'm preaching about, like, I'm it's we're in Easter, Lent right now, season, right? And so it's
Hmm.
Jesus with the criminals on the cross, right? And, like, and I talk about a little bit of my rapture anxiety because it was, like, about being lukewarm and not having that. But what made, like, the criminal that Jesus is like, "I'll see you in paradise," not lukewarm, and what made him get that invitation had nothing to do with right belief or anything. Like,
Yeah.
he was just like, there was a posture of surrender and humility and self-awareness, and it's like he didn't
Mm.
claim, like, he never went to a membership class. He like didn't have any beliefs. He didn't do anything that like made it so that he would be in paradise with Jesus. And so, but I think like we throw out stories like those, and then we go into other places where like you have to have all of these beliefs, right? And I think even as we talk about being piping hot or lukewarm, I think you're exactly right in the sense that it's like far more commitment based than it is knowledge based. But like we,
Hmm.
as creatures that want to be smarter than everyone, I think we've made it about something that it's not.
Yeah, but that messes with you when you're in the middle, because then being in the middle and living in the gray just feels like half-assing it, when maybe it's like the most whole-assing thing you can do. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we've said that at the beginning of the podcast, like to sit in this is this like pursuit of truth and this pursuit of. So I feel like I'm saying different things at the same time though, because I'm like, yeah, we should give it that standard, but then at the same time, I I feel like I walked away from doing the hard work of sitting in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's not it. Well, first off, I would say 80% of our podcast is us talking out of both sides of our mouth. So I think it's a pretty like common
Yeah.
thing that we do. But I do think also like I think I wouldn't say you're not doing the hard work, but I would say like there is a part of you right now that I see like you're just exhausted to lift the blocks and like to wrestle with certain things. But
Right.
I also don't think like wh- our faith shouldn't kill us, right? Like it shouldn't be
Yeah.
exhausting. And so I do think like this is where I have less or more sympathy for you. I'm like, I think sometimes you just need to pause and rest. Now, I don't think that throwing the baby out with the bathwater is the healthiest thing either, but like I don't think that's what resting is, right? To be like, I'm not gonna
Mm,
pick this up for a while. Like there's been seasons of my life where like I've prayed less, I've read scripture less, I've been in community less, and those weren't out of like a lack of desire or commitment to my faith, but it was like in this season that was more it was less helpful and more exhausting than it was like life-giving. And so like I think putting some things down from time to time isn't half-assing it, right?
yeah, like to rest isn't half-assing it. Sometimes it's the most like productive thing you can do. I think it's just like, when is it rest and when is it laziness? To me,
Oh,
I see those as very similar,
yeah, I think
and
that's
that's
a really
what's
good
tricky.
question. I mean,
Yeah,
so do you feel like you're resting or do you feel like you're being lazy?
I it changes all the time. It changes. Like sometimes
Well,
I'm
so
like, oh, this is like an
say you're on a vacation, right? Like going on
yeah.
vacation, you're going like what would make on vacation resting or being lazy? And like how would you define the difference? And would you even care if you were on vacation? Like would you care about trying to differentiate the two?
That is
Cuz I
on
think
vacation. I feel like that is like time that you've committed to rest. So you're doing the right thing by resting.
yeah.
But if the time isn't like set apart for it, then it starts to feel like laziness to me.
Yeah, so maybe this is a better like so right now we were talking about this before we went live, but like I'm in a relatively stressful to extremely stressful point of my life right now with some things that are going on with the
Mhm.
church, and it's to the point where like I there are certain times where I can't like I don't have the capacity to do anything. Like I'm in like a legit probably closest season of depression that I've been in a long time where it's like I have no motivation to do things sometimes. So
Mm.
like there have been times during my work week where I'm like I have to like I can't work. So like I'll go play video games. But I'll be like in my mind like that's not rest. That is being lazy. Like it's me skirting certain things. Now there's like biological things happening in my brain that are causing me to feel depression and like things that I could do to like mitigate that. But I think to your point, like there's a time when playing a video game could be restful and recharging, and other times it's me like trying to avoid the things I need to do because I don't have the mental capacity to do them. But I don't know that I didn't need to also be lazy so that I could like go back and do the work later, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a great analogy or connection,
No.
but like I feel I can looking back retrospectively of my last couple months, I can see the times I legitimately rested and the times I was lazy. Both gave me the ability to pause and get back into what I was doing. But the
Mm.
times that I actually rested, I felt rested coming out of it. Like laziness, I never left feeling rested. I just paused what I was doing for a while.
Okay, okay, like I think that that's an important distinction. Is like laziness is in some sense a pause, whereas like rest is like an intentional recharge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can feel, and you probably at different seasons, even if it's now or not, like, and maybe I don't know how much you've thought about that in your deconstruction journey, like whether it's laziness or resting. But I like, yeah, I think I can tell the times I really, really rested versus the times I just like was like, I'm gonna do the things I want to do that feel like they should be restful, but they're not actually restful.
Yeah, but it's like, but when you're in that like really difficult headspace, you don't have any motivation to even like do that work of discerning. You're just like, I just want to do nothing.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's part of me, and I don't think this is a good attitude, but part of me is like, for 23 years, I like didn't take a break. And like, you know, this like, I
Yeah.
can break, I can take a break. It's this very, which I think is kind of entitled and not the most helpful attitude, but I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I'll say this season has I've given me more empathy, like, right now as I'm even reflecting on the comparison between where I'm at and where you're at, because I do get this, like, uh, the lack of desire to like you see like I look around and I see all these things I need to get done, whether it's like searching for a building, writing a sermon, pastoral care, all these things that I need to do and want to do. But sometimes like, do I even
Mm,
have the mental, emotional, or spiritual capacity to do any of these things, even if I want to and I know I should do them? And it's been like I had not drawn that connection until this conversation just started. And you and I were
mm.
talking before, like again, like I was in a pretty dark place as we were texting last night, and so it's like my stress is taking over different parts. But I like as I'm making those mental connections right now, it's like I can see glimmers of that maybe in some of your deconstruction. Though I think you're hopefully, maybe probably handling your situation with more health than I have. I don't know, but
I mean, I don't know. I don't think I would like, I could not confidently look at you and be like, I've done my deconstruction incredibly healthily. Like, that just would not be fair and true. Like, I think there are some things that I've done healthily and wisely, but I think that it's just so exhausting. And you just like,
yeah,
it's like burnout. It's like deconstruction burnout of like, you know what, fine. Like, I'm just gonna, there's like an analogy in my head, but it's not, it's like words aren't happening. I don't know. It's not
I
working.
will
The
say
analogy isn't working for me.
this is has nothing to do with the conversation we're talking about, but I will say that it's a lot easier to podcast in the same room. I was just thinking about like how, and this is fine, but I was like the dynamic is so much different because I think you and I are both people. It's like being in the same room with people feels much more natural than like I feel like I'm on a business meeting right now more than I feel like I'm sitting in the same room as you.
But I feel like this episode is getting like pretty deep and emotional, and then it's just like, but it feels like I'm on a business meeting
I might
talking
have,
about that.
yeah, I might have cried if we were in person, so it's probably better for my soul that I'm in a
Oh
different
man.
place. Um,
So okay, so Danny, like not to like spring it on you, but I guess like
yeah,
you've said like there are times when when you're taking a pause and you're like, this might be laziness, I'm avoiding,
yeah.
part of it is rest. Both are helpful even if one is better. But like what are, and maybe you're like, Emily, don't ask me this, I'm not doing anything, but like what is the process of like getting out of that place?
Mm. Like a place of laziness, is that what you're asking?
A place of just of like lack of motivation, maybe is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's actually a really good, question, and I don't know that I have, like, the prescriptive here, the 5 steps, but, like, for me,
Yeah.
I think it goes back to, um, like, I have to re-cling and discover why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So like
Mm,
or like so like for me, like being a pastor can be hard. But also being a parent can be hard. Being whatever can be hard, right? And so there are times as any of those different arenas that I can be like just not motivated, lazy. I can feel frustrated, like I want to just eject from all those things. And returning to like why it was so profound to me is always my first step. And so like if Annie and I
mm,
are in a place of marital stress, like that moment is not the whole story. And so like I think back to like, well,
mm,
why did I fall in love with Annie? Like why did we decide to create a life together? Like when I'm at church. Like, I have no less love for the well, but there's times it's stressful. And so why did I feel like compelled to start a new kind of church and do this? And like,
Mm,
why is that a part of it? And this has been, I don't know if I said this. I think I've said it to you, but I don't know if I said it on the podcast. Like, but a refrain for me, or a part of scripture that I've gone back to, is this idea of like returning the joy of my salvation.
mm,
And like, so I think of that in terms like return to me the joy of my marriage, of this podcast, of my church, like all of these things. And I think getting back to like the joy that was inherently found in it is always my first step. Now I'll say second, third, fourth, fifth steps is like I can do a lot of things that are really destructive to like whether it's like cutting myself off from other people, whether it's like trying to like drink a lot. Like, I mean, there's a number of different things, right, that you can do. And I bet you could think in your deconstruction journey, like there are times where you've probably made a concerted decision to do something you probably knew was destructive, but it like was what you wanted to do because it felt good at the time. And I think that's another interesting thing to do. And that takes a level of self awareness that I don't always have the energy to have. But saying, like, is this actually like, what are the self destructive things I'm doing that I think are actually helping me, but they're really not, if that makes sense?
yeah, I had a very interesting experience yesterday. I was on a walk with someone who was kind of from like my, like fundamentalist life. And I felt like she like asked me about where I was at spiritually. And I felt like I was answering. And then I would give all of the like, I'm like, but I know that like you could see it as this and this and this. And so it came off as like very self aware because I was like, I'm trying to like take out the bad parts, but I know some people would think like you're just trying to take out the difficult parts. Like, and like I was like doing all of this work of like saying anything that I thought she might say to like push back because I actually didn't want to engage with those questions.
Mm.
Not because I'm actually like engaging with them myself. I'm not gonna say that's super fair. I do think I sometimes do, but in other ways I do think like I'm taking the time to just not, but I know I'm like I have this like faux self awareness that comes off as like you can't challenge me.
Mm. I feel like you're very self-aware in where you're at. I just don't think you always do what you are self-aware of. I I think you seem to be very self-aware though during this journey. But I think it's like, as you said, like if you're talking to this person, you're like labeling all these things. Like I don't know if you're like I should be doing this, this, and this, and that's an awareness. I don't know if that's exactly what you're trying to say, but it's like I don't know how often you like saying them and doing them are two different things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I don't. This is like the origin of this conversation of like half-assing, whole-assing. Like I think just to pull out a little bit like further, I think the people that are saying that as well, I think you were spot on what you said at the beginning. Like it's really like it comes from a place of trying to shame the person for the beliefs they're holding or not holding. And I think it has far less to
mm,
do with like the
absolutely.
investment in their spiritual life. And you've said this, or maybe like I think even though you feel like you're in no man's land, you're in the desert, you have no beliefs, there's no truth. Like I do think you're pretty invested in trying to get somewhere. Now I don't know if you know where that somewhere is going to be or what that's going to look like or how, but like I wouldn't. There are thoughts, things you've said, and actions that I could be like, "That might be questionable." Your commitment to the process, I haven't been like, "This is questionable."
Mm.
Um, because
Yeah, I'll take that.
I don't think you, and this would be to anyone, because I don't think you have to have a podcast about deconstruction to be committed to deconstruction, but, like, the
Yeah.
fact that you show up every week and that we talk about this and, like, we have conversations, I imagine, like, there are other people you like even, like, saying I talked with a pastor, like, I went on a walk with one of my friends, like, to be not
Mm,
committed to it would be to cut all of those things out of your life and be like, I'm just doing life completely differently, which is where I think having a foot in each camp, which is what it does seem like you're doing at times, isn't maybe that unhealthy because the other side would be like, I'm just jumping fully back into what I knew and just like, and not having any
right.
change of thought or jumping completely into this other thing and being like, screw the past, I'm out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. You know what? That makes me feel better. Like you even pointed out those things like I just brought up as like casually a part of my life that it's like, no, like that's part of doing the work, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also like because I think that this is I don't know how helpful our conversation was, but I think this topic is one
I
that
think it's helpful.
I think it's hopefully helpful. I think, but I think the question you're asking and the sentiment behind it, I bet you a lot of our audience either has felt
Mm,
like they're half-assing it or have been told they're half-assing it. And so I think adding some helpful like language and definitions around what it does it mean, because that was your initial question, like what does it mean to half-ass or
yeah.
whole-ass? And I think you're very right, because the other way would say, what does it look like to be piping hot or lukewarm or cold or whatever? And I think the investment in the process is the
Mm,
most committed thing to do. And we've said this a long time or a lot through this. It's like the end goal, maybe we haven't said this, at least for me, like the end goal for me, for you, if I was projecting, doesn't look like having a doctrinal statement you can sign. It looks like having a relationship with Jesus. And like that's like for me, that's the only thing that really matters. And I think you're doing the work of trying to cultivate that, to find that. But I think the easiest thing to do, like an easy, I don't want to say trap because that makes it sound more negative, but an easy thing to fall into is be like, the end of this process is being able to recreate a doctrinal statement. And I think that's not the end goal.
that's really helpful actually, because I do think sometimes that's like what I hope I get back to,
Yeah.
or what I think I should get back to,
Yeah.
and that it feels overwhelming,
And I'll
and
even,
that continues to give me lack of motivation.
yeah. Well, I'll say like even for the well, like there are people that are like bummed out we don't have a doctrinal statement because it's like it does feel messy and can give anxiety to not have those things. I just find them to be way too restrictive, um, and just not what faith and life is about.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this has been a helpful conversation. Like you said, like I think a lot of people feel this way, whether it's other people accusing them or just like own internal shame. Like I do think people feel like, well, maybe I'm just not putting in the same effort. But I think like something that I've just been sitting with also is like Jesus said, like, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I'm just like, I think if this yoke feels so heavy, I don't think it's Jesus's yoke. And that I think is what I'm sitting with is like, how can I find that yoke? Because I
yeah.
don't think that would overwhelm me or stress me out or make me more tired, you know?
Yeah, and I do like because I can hear fundamentalist people in my ear right now being like, if it's easy, then it's not
I
from God,
know.
right? Like, but I do think like though not only are those words out of Jesus' mouth, and like faith doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's easy, it doesn't mean we get everything we want, but the Jesus part of life, that is the easy part.
Mm,
Like that
mm,
should be the light yoke. And that doesn't mean that there's not like persecution. That doesn't mean there's not
for sure.
like stumbling blocks or hurdles or X, Y, or Z. But the Jesus side of it, I think you're spot on. It's like that part was promised to be light and easy and enjoyable.
Yeah, that's what I'm like rooting for.
Yeah. Um,
Um, well,
so
I think this has been a good episode. Do you have any final? Are you about to say something?
I have a question, but this is my final question. How do you think,
Okay.
what percentage, if you could put it on it, of our audience do you think is people that are in deconstruction, that are trying to support their friends in deconstruction, or what I think is the most interesting third, people that listen to this so they know how to combat people that are in deconstruction, like the haters. Like, what like if you,
Yeah.
and actually, if you're listening, I would say whether it's on TikTok or you can actually comment on Spotify and um, Anchor as well, Apple. Like, let us know where you're at in the journey. I think we love that kind of stuff. So, like
Yeah.
whether you're on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, let us know. But what do you like? How would you break up our audience? What do you think it is?
I think our audience is people deconstructing who found us on TikTok. I don't think there's a lot of people hate listening to this podcast unless they know me. Sounds terrible.
So they're
But
like
I think
real.
like
They're
I
Emily's
hate
ex
listening,
friends that are hate listening to this.
not ex friends, but just people who are like, what is going on with her
Yeah.
listening? Like I feel like those would be the people who maybe disagree that listen. Um, maybe that's me just thinking way too highly about myself. But and then I think there probably are some people that are just trying to understand.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't give any numbers because
Yeah.
I have no idea. What's your guess?
I think we're like 80% people that are in deconstruction. I
Yeah.
think, and then I think you're right. I think our TikTok is a lot of hate listens, but I think or hate watching, but I think and actually our YouTube is. It's really fun. Like some of the comments on our shorts and stuff are pretty funny to me.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, but I think it's mostly people that are in it. Like that's my guess. So, but let us know in the comments anywhere. Like we'd love to know. Like and just like I don't know that like there are a lot of people that reach out and DM or whatever, but like I try to make a practice of like thinking about and praying about and for like the people that are on this, knowing that like even though this is our
Mm.
conversation, like it's not just our community. We're not the only members of this community, and so just trying to know that wherever you are, like I'm thinking about you and praying about you for whatever that's worth. So.
Yay, Pastor Dan. Um, all right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And know that it is okay to rest. And as always, embrace the journey.
I almost forgot to clap.
I was like, what?